Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Tenetria Williams, licensed professional counselor, and my guest today is Miss Cynthia Thompson. Everybody give a shout out to our guest. You guys know what I want you to do. I want you to hashtag the word live. If you are watching us live, you'll know you're watching live because it will have a red button at the top that reads live. Hashtag live and let me know what city, what state you're watching from. And if you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. Again, let me know where you're watching from. What are we doing here? This is Minding My Mental Health, and our goal is to tear down the stigma of getting mental health treatment in our community. Also, our goal is to bring more awareness to our community about mental health issues. And so we cover a variety of topics. And today we're talking about protecting our children and protecting our workers that help protect our children, right? Because that's a very important task, a very important job, and it's a very high stress job. So we're going to get into this with our guest, Cynthia Thompson, who happens to be my family. So woo woo, shout out to family helping people when they need help. Thank you so much. Cynthia, I might call her Cint when we're going through this because that's what I would call her normally. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Cint, tell me about your training, your experience as far as your working.
Well, I have always had a knack for just helping people and wanting to make sure everybody had what they needed. So I worked at the Human Development Center in Conway for like 17 years, and I was helping, but I started to not be as fulfilled. And so then I went into Children and Family Services. And a little funny thing about that is I have a total phobia of dogs. Everybody that knows me knows that. I'd always wanted to do that job, but I know people have dogs and you have to go in the homes. And so I always drew away from even trying to do the job because I'm like, I'm just not dealing with the dogs. But something just kept on me and kept on me. And I went ahead and pursued that avenue of life. And so that's how I got into the Children and Family Services because I had to put back my own fear and phobia of the dogs. And because I had the bigger picture was that I wanted to help families that needed me. And so that's kind of how I got started. Well, that is how I got started in working with Children and Family Services.
What kind of training is needed for that?
In the state of Arkansas, you'll have to have a degree, a bachelor's degree in some form of social services, whether it's sociology, psychology, any of fields in that nature would give you the starting background and the experience. They have family service workers, but they also have PAs, which are people that help the families. And if you're not sure, even with the degree, if you want to do that type of work, then the PA route will be the first to go because that's just like the assistant to the worker. And that'll give you an idea of what you're doing before you just jump in and say, oh, yes, this is what I'm going to do. So you'll know kind of what they do before before you
Yeah,
start.
that's a smart route.
Yeah.
Now, so I was saying a lot of people, when they hear social workers, they either think hero or villain, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, hero is that these people come in and they help kids, or these people take away people's kids. What are some of those misconceptions that people have when they think about caseworkers, social workers, that kind of stuff?
Um, if it's on an upside with a family that needs the help and is accepting of the help, then you're the hero. If there's a family who's not willing to accept that they have some deficits and need assistance, then you're always going to be the villain until they accept that they do need this help that's trying to be offered. And because it's not just that we're going to go in and take somebody's kids. And people think just because CPS is involved that the kids are going to be taken. There are a lot of services that could be offered in the home to strengthen the family in the home to make sure that the kids are safe and the family has what they need to be able to keep the family together in their own home.
So, how do you guys make the determination if children will be removed or remain in the home?
Um, if there's a neglectful or abusive situation that can't be remedied while the children are in the home, if services can't be in place to safely keep the kids in the home, then they'll always have to be removed.
That makes sense. So, is there like a certain guideline?
There is a guideline. there's like 10 main key points that we look at to make sure that they don't fall under either of these 10. And if they're not under those 10, they can safely be left in the home. Some of those 10 will be like, and it's not necessarily, a lot of people think, well, they don't have utilities, their lights are out, or they don't have running water. That's not necessarily a reason to remove a child from the home, because if they have access to these things, then they can safely be left in the home and services to be put in place to assist them with getting those utilities and stuff back home. Now, if they don't have a plan, if a plan can't be put in place to safely keep the kids, I mean, if it's going to be like an overnight situation, they don't have water, but they have jugs of water. They don't have water, but they can take a shower next door. That's not a reason to remove a child. But if there's no plan for anything to be put in place and the child can't safely be left there, then obviously there'd have to be a removal.
So it sounds like y'all really do as much as you can to keep the children in the home if it's possible and safe for them.
Always, never remove it. I mean, because even though things may appear to us to be chaotic or not the best for the children, we deal with a lot of different racial, ethnic, cultural backgrounds, and some people, that's just who they are and that's what they're going to do. So you have to not be judgmental, because my clean may not be your clean, but it doesn't mean that it's not appropriate for that child to be there. I mean, for an example, if you walk into a home and the 16-year-old's room is just trash, you typically can expect that from a lot of 16-year-olds. It doesn't mean that the home is environmental, because the 16-year-old technically can clean up himself, and it's probably his mama has told him 100 times, you clean your room, you clean your room. So it's things like that you have to just look at, and it's more of a case-by-case basis, because you don't necessarily know. You can read the report going in, but until you actually get in the home and assess the situation and what's needed, what they have, then you won't know if there needs to be a removal or just services can be put in place.
So can you tell us about how much those decisions weigh on you? Meaning, do you ever go home, or did you ever go home going, ooh, I probably should have took the kids, or maybe like second guessing yourself, or letting those decisions be real heavy on you?
Early on, no, when I first started, because I'm of the mindset, if I got to think about it twice, then it probably needs to be done. But I always ask all the questions. I make sure that I'm not going to leave a child if I got to go home and think, well, I hope I left the child in a safe place. That's just not a good thing for me. That never works for me. So I would never leave a child. If I have to think, like, would I leave my own kid in this? I was never going to leave the child there. But there was a lot of times that just because the report is made, we have people on the outside looking in and being judgmental of what's going on in the house, but don't really know. But when you go in the home and you sit down and you talk to the parents or the kids and just get a feel for what's going on, then you won't have to second guess or wonder if you should have left the child or not, or if the child is okay to be there.
So I know that the job is real stressful, because I worked in the office, not necessarily for the office, but I've worked in the offices, and I've seen just literally how many cases y'all would have was mind blowing to me. I was like, I don't have a clue how you would keep up with that many cases, and that's stressful. Like the cases themselves could be stressful. And so I also saw a lot of turnover. And if you look on the website, those are typically like always hiring job. Like it's just a continual. We're open, right? Because they're so stressful, and it's a lot for a person. How long were you in that role, and how did you keep from getting burnt out, or how did you see burnout in the field?
Burnout is definitely probably the number one reason that the turnover is so great. You have to get a balance. You have to get a balance between yourself, your family, and the job. And a lot of the reason, I mean, the stress was big or great, I guess I would say, more so not because of just one particular case, but having so many cases with so many different issues and so many different families. And so you have to meet people where they are and deal with all these different scenarios or situations that they had going on. And so my main thing with me that I always worked, I worked in Conway County and I live in Conway, which is Fartman County. It took me 22 minutes to get to work from my house. That was a good time for me. I needed that. I had to drop my kids off at school and then I had to go to work. But I needed that 20 minutes just for me in the car to get myself ready to be able to go to work to deal with other people and their families. And with the same situation going home. That 20-minute drive home gave me a time to decompress, get my mind right, to go back into my own family, because you don't want to bring that home with you and spill over into your life, because that'll be just double stress. And so I'd always make sure that I took that time in the morning to get myself right to get to work, and that time in the evening to get myself right to go home. And you have to do just what works for you. But then the stressful part about, you may have 10 families with the same needs, but then you may have another couple, the needs are greater, and you have to be able to determine who needs what right then. And it could, I could have a schedule made and plan to go out today and do this, that, and the other, and then something jump off. You have to be ready for that type of stuff, because it's a lot of not knowing what's going to happen, even though you have a schedule. It's not really a schedule. It's like, you know what needs to be done, but if something else more pressing come up, you got to be ready at that moment to go in and work with that family to get things situated, or to get them with the plan regulating to go and make sure they got what they need. So it was a lot of that. A lot of the stress came from, even though you have a schedule, you don't really know if that's what's going to happen today. So you got to kind of be ready, I guess, to go with the flow. And the flow may take you here or yonder and you just be all over the place, but you got to be ready for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are the things that will really just throw off the day?
You could have a schedule plan. You're going out to visit 3 families. You're going to offer parenting classes in the family. You're going to take this family a food box. And then the police will call and say, hey, we got this kid that's been at home by himself. The home is trashed, no parents around. And obviously that's going to take precedence over going to do a parenting class in the home, because you have an immediate need of a child that's 6 that's at home by themselves right now. And so, that would, something like that would throw stuff off.
Right. So what are some of the things that as a community we can look at, like, because I think it's a fine balance between being a nosy neighbor and being judgmental, and really like keeping your eyes out, looking out for people in your community. What could people, I guess, see or do to help that's not just being nosy? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I'm trying to think of the right words to use, because the nosy neighbor situation tends to be an issue. A lot of times neighbors may not necessarily be nosy, but the people that they are watching or that they see an issue going on, they may not be accepting of the help. And it's usually because they have something to hide, or they just don't want people in their business. A situation could be the neighbor could be across the street, see a 4-year-old out ride his bike, nobody around. We saw several, we always see situations like that where the parents thought the 4-year-old was asleep, decided she was going to go take a shower, and he just decided he was going to go outside and ride his bike. That happens more than we think it does. It doesn't mean that the mom was being neglectful or abusive. She had a plan in place. She didn't know the child could even open the front door, but he got out. So the neighbor, because they've had words before, or she just don't like the car the woman drives, would jump and call the police, opposed to going and asking the kid, hey, are you okay? Where's your mom? Or knocking on the door. And so that brings us in where they really could have been alleviated if the neighbor had just gone and knocked on the door. But it just depends on how well you get along with your neighbors, if you know your neighbors. And it's always a good idea to know your neighbors, at least the people in your immediate vicinity, because they would have known that this is not typical, that this child is out here by himself. Let me see what's going on. But a lot of people are just so quick to want to get somebody involved, call the police. So if people would not be so judgmental when or jealous, or I mean, because it's going to be an array of things. The reason they would be so quick to call the police, opposed to just asking the kid, "Is he okay?" and "Where are your parents?" It's just simple stuff like that. But then you know your neighborhood, and you know that if you don't need to talk to the lady on the corner because she's going to do this, that, or the other, then you'll want to just go ahead and call. But I mean, it always helps if you have a relationship with your neighbors, even if it's just a common know their, coming and goings and just speaking.
Yeah. So are there signs that people could say these are, as a, I guess, community, these are things that I need to look for if, because again, I got a child, I got little brothers, I've been around kids, they can have bruises, they can have all these things on them, and it literally can be from them
Doing it to themselves, yeah.
But also, we don't want to overlook and assume things are those things when there could be some abuse. Are there any type of signs that people could start look for to help?
And again, that goes to just knowing like who you're around, like knowing the kid. Like say if the kid comes to school every day and he has bruises, obviously you may want to ask the kid, like, man, what happened? And then that, go from there. But if they don't give you any reason or any concern, then that's not a reason to be calling them in. Now, obviously, if you have concerns, you should call a report in or call the police, but not necessarily always. And sometimes people just be too gung ho to turn somebody in when it could be something simple as just asking the questions. But I mean, like the neighborhoods our folks just don't talk and get along most of the time. Like everybody wants to take care of themselves and be in their own world. And I don't know what they got going on over there. And you don't have to be in a person's household to know that this kid is usually not outside by himself. Something must be going on. That's an issue. But it's not necessarily an issue where you would see him when you have to jump up and call the police or CPS to get them involved. It may be that you see the kid and he's usually always dressed good, always have on shoes, jacket, this, that, and the other. And today you see him out. If you know that's out of the norm, then you don't have to call anybody without checking with the parents. You can ask them, is everything okay? And depending on how that goes, how receptive they are of you trying to get involved or just asking that question, then you can move from there. Obviously, if you see a kid that comes to school or in the store that's just really beat up, that's a red flag to want to get somebody involved, especially if you try to speak to the child and they're withdrawn. But if the kid has a bruise on his arm, his eye, his leg, and you was like, man, what happened to you? If they go on in and just start telling you what happened, then that's not a reason to be concerned because they obviously know they fell off the bike. And some kids think that's a good, not a good thing, but they're glad to tell that this is what happened to me. But if you have a child and you try to talk to them and they don't want to tell you anything, then that will be a red flag and a reason to try to get someone else involved.
So what I hear is don't be immediate to call or don't be so quick to call. If you can check the story a little bit, try to do that. If they don't seem receptive or if something doesn't feel right internally, you should probably make that call.
Those are usually red flags, yeah. I mean, if your child is coming to my house and always saying they're hungry, there's nothing wrong with me asking you, hey, do you need some help with groceries? And most people are not going to be too receptive of that because they're embarrassed or just don't want folks to know, but some people will. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have the groceries or have the means. They could just be like, my kid eats all the time anyway. And, if you're around the person enough, you can pretty much pick up and know if there's an issue or if it's just a kid wanting something because you open a bag of chips, then I want a bag as well. There's a difference between really being hungry and just wanting to eat something because it's there.
Yeah. Can you share about any success stories you've had? Obviously, you don't have to share names or anything, but just like a time that you felt like, man, I saw this family really take the help and turn things around.
Actually, yes, I think I have several. I mean, believe it or not. I mean, over the years that I've worked the case, I mean, there's a lot of cases that did end up in adoption, but there are cases that parents really got their stuff together because they saw, like, look, I'm gonna lose my kids forever if I don't do this. There was a young mom, I think she was like 25 maybe. She had like 5 kids under the age of 6. She had been raised by a single dad, no mom in the home. So the actual there's a difference between playing with the baby doll and getting everything, making the doll cute and actually taking care of a child. So she didn't have that mindset, the know-how. I mean, she knew how to bathe the kid and that type, but actually taking care of the child, she just really didn't know. So, and it came a point where the children did have to be removed. But the situation where mom was living, because she was still living with her dad that had raised her, that just wasn't a good relationship. It wasn't, it was just bad for her and for the kids. But once the kids were removed, and obviously she loved her dad, but she wanted her kids. And so she worked hard to make sure that she got her own place and things were in place before the children were removed, before the children were returned. So what we did first was we returned the baby because it was like an infant, um, to make sure that she had the feeding schedule down. And a lot of times, if you were raised in chaos and not clean, that's all you know. So even though she knew the child was dirty and had to be changed, and she would do that, she wouldn't necessarily take the diaper where it needed to be. So it was just like a lot of that just in the baby's room. So once she realized, this is a dirty diaper, it can't stay in here. This is why the house smells this way. This is, like a hazard. So we need to get that taken care of. And once we really worked with her and she had the intensive parenting and really got to where, I mean, it was never a doubt of the love for her children, but it was just being trained on how to care for them because she really didn't know. But once she got the baby back, and then we were able to take the kids home at separate times. Like we took the baby and then the oldest child, and it gave her a chance to work with those kids, to get a routine, to get a schedule, and to know, like, look, even though the baby drank this bottle over in the night, I can't just leave it sitting on the nightstand and fix another one. We got to wash these and start over. So that was a really good thing because she was a young mom and the love was definitely there, but the know-how and the training, she just didn't get that. And maybe because she was raised by a man, I don't know, it's just, that was not necessarily not a mothering instinct, but just the knowing how to take care of the kids just wasn't there. And for doing what was best for them. So that was a good thing because she was able to get all of her kids back in her own place. And I mean, I went by several times, even the case stayed open for a while, and the house, she kept it clean, she had a routine, and it worked.
Oh, that's good. So it almost sounds like she literally just needed knowledge about how to
She
parent.
really just needed, and I've actually talked to her. The kids are, I think the youngest one now is like 15. So, I mean, she's been able to give her kids and teach them what we were able to teach her. So when they have their own children, they'll know that you have to do this. You can't just leave the trash, the junk, and stuff around. That was more of an environmental neglect situation opposed to an abusive situation.
Right. Now, how about, do you guys have police to go in with you on those visits, like when you're first going in, or how about your own safety? I know you talked about having dogs, but there could be literally you don't know what you're walking into.
Well, and
Do
that's
you have
true.
safety
Uh,
protocol?
the police has escorted in the home several times, especially when we get a report and it sounds pretty scary. I mean, law enforcement, you just call them and they're just they don't really have to do anything because a lot of times police presence intimidates the people where they would have tried to do something, especially if there's a situation where the report says the family has guns or, you don't want to go into a situation alone like that. And so a number of times law enforcement has to go in with us depending on what the report says. And some of the report would have been true, but law enforcement being there, just it just didn't jump off that way. And so that made a big difference. And A lot of times we've gotten reports where the parents had arrest warrants and they had guns in the house. And so obviously with the police there, they were going to try to not give us any trouble. So once the children were removed, a lot of times parents were arrested. They had arrest warrants, but they didn't give us any issues just because law enforcement was there. I think the law enforcement presence has always made a difference in situations where it could go really bad.
So now, have you had to, whether personally or maybe witnessed somebody getting threatened or somebody trying to get aggressive to the caseworkers?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of occasions. There's been times that I've gone to the home where I thought, well, I can handle this. I'm gonna go ahead and go. The situation just wasn't going the way that it probably needed to go, especially with kids involved and then myself, my safety as well. And so I was like, well, okay, well, we'll just reach back out to you. And then I just go down the road and call the police to have them go back with me. And the situation was totally different when the police was there. I mean, you can really see a difference if the officers are there. And like I said, I think it just intimidates them and they just do better just because the police are there. But if there's any time that I went in and I thought I wasn't going to be safe or an issue was going to jump off, then I just leave and take the police back with me.
So see, that would probably throw me off all night. After coming from that, how did you unwind? I know you said your drive, but was that all it would take, or how would you say, okay, I gotta take care of my mental health?
The drive would definitely help. And then it would help too when the kids would say things like, what took you so long to come get us? That type of stuff. We hear that a lot. Do we have to go back? I don't want to be there like this, and just those things alone make you feel better because you helped the child in that situation. And just because the child was removed from a situation like that, where they were like, what took you so long? It doesn't mean that they're automatically never going back. Obviously, we're going to offer the family services to try to get the situation remedied where the kids could be safe. But just the fact that that particular night, this 6-year-old kid was like, what took you so long? That makes you feel like you have really, done something. I mean, it could be kind of bittersweet, like you're glad that you did it, but you're like, man, what was really going on? The reason a 6-year-old had to even say that. Yeah.
So what happens when y'all can tell somebody has mental health issues, like the parents have whatever, their reality is skewed, or maybe drug addiction, or those types of things? How does that play into them being able to get their children back?
Service can still be put in place. We offer counseling services, psych evals, just to see where the need is and where we can meet them at with it. And not always, and not necessarily people on drugs or with mental health issues are going to be receptive of the help. But once those services are put in place and they see, well, look, if I want my kids, I'm going to have to do this. I've got to get this help. And then when they come back and say, I'm really glad you stayed on me to make me do this, that's a thing that not necessarily lessens the stress, but make you feel like you've done something, like you've really made a difference. And a lot of times you can offer the services and they won't take it the first time around. They might not take it the first 5 or 10 times around, but you continue to work with the family and continue to work with the parents and, allow them to know and let them see that you want your kids love you, we can help you through this. And just being consistent and being a positive support for them. Because a lot of times CPS is the only support they have. And definitely the only positive support they have. And so a lot of times, you'll want to just keep encouraging them and staying with them to let them know that, if you go ahead and go to counseling, you don't have to talk to me. I don't have to know what you really got going on in your mind or your, my thought process. But talk to these people because these are professionals. This is what they do. And then with that being said, a good therapist will be able to work with them to get through those issues that are kind of holding them back or just have them bound by for whatever reason, and go from there. Because you can't really work with a person if their mindset is not there to work, whether it's a drug induced, or just mental itself. And so once they get that help they need and can be able to see through past what they got going on, like right now in that moment, then it'll make a difference. Just offering them those psychological services to help.
So you mentioned, you said sometimes we'll offer support 5 times, or like it may take a lot before they do that. What's the reason? And tell me, do you see it as beneficial or problematic that it goes so long? Like, and I've seen kind of the benefits and the drawbacks of, it's like, man, that was 2 years that kid wasn't stable, or a year and a half, whatever.
Yeah.
And they could have been in a family. And then you also go, but that parent needed a year to get things together. And now because of that 1 year, their life has changed. So how do you determine, or how did they kind of see how long those cases last and that kind of stuff?
At the very beginning, they typically give like a year, 18 months. In about a year, it doesn't mean, if the kid is not back home in a year, it doesn't mean that the rights are going to be terminated. They're never going to get them back. They have what they call a permanency planning hearing. And in that hearing, we try to decide at that point what has happened, and let's get a permanent plan in place. So if the kid has been in foster care and the parent has really been doing what they need to do and they're just not quite there, then they will extend it for another 6 months. But I've seen cases where kid has been in foster care 7 months, parents hadn't done anything. The 8th month, they decide, look, I want my kid, I'm going to do this. And they wholeheartedly do everything the court, CPS is asking them to do, but they're just not quite there. So in a situation like that, it's again a case-by-case basis where a permanency planning hearing is held just to get a permanent plan in place. Now there are times when case been over for a year, hadn't heard from the parent. All the phone calls, all the letters, they just didn't show up at all. So again, that permanency planning hearing will give a permanent plan for that child. And that goes at that point, maybe change determination so the child could be adopted to have a stable home. But I mean, in a situation where the parent done nothing for the first 7, 8 months, and then they jumped on and just started doing. So I guess that year time frame, kind of, it's a good thing, even though the child is kind of held in limbo because you want to give the parent a chance. But if they wait 8 months and then they just jump in and start doing, I'd rather that than 3 months down the road, like, oh, this kid needs to be adopted. That just didn't give the parent a chance to get themselves in a place to get the child back.
How much weight does the child's opinion hold on, like, there are some kids like, I don't want to go back. Do you guys go, okay, they've done what they're supposed to do, but this child doesn't want to go back? Or is it, this is a kid, how much weight does the kid's opinion have, I guess?
Definitely weight. I think that if a 12-year-old is saying, because if they've lived in chaos and all of this for the last 10 years, and then they've been in foster care for a year and things are good and they're stable and settled, obviously they're going to want to be like, I just don't want to go back to that. And so that's where you go in and offer family counseling. So the kid can be reassured that the parent is really going to do what they say they're going to do. So there's been times where kids were like, this, I just don't want to. And then, but if you offer the family counseling and the parent is consistent and the counseling is good, then though they can be reunified. And that has happened. I mean, any kid that every kid wants to be with their parent, even the worst parent, even the parent that just may not ever get it together, that kid still love their parent and want to be with them. But they also want to be reassured and know that they're going to be safe and this is going to be okay when I go home. Because when you live like that for 10 years and then you get a year of all this structure and stability and this is the way things need to be, you're going to kind of wonder how things will be if you go back to that same situation. And so it's not just an automatic move. Sometimes the kid may just do weekend visits with the parents, unsupervised in the home, and kind of ease them into that situation also while having good intensive family counseling to help them, rebuild that bond of that relationship.
Mhm. So did you find within like your colleagues that y'all actually said, let's make sure we're taking care of ourselves? Or was it a place where, because there are some jobs where people just kind of neglect their own mental health because they're helping.
Yeah.
Was that the culture of what you saw where people would say, well, no, I have my own therapist, or I'm going to work out after this so I can release, or did it feel like y'all kind of put yourselves on the back burner?
When I first started working with Children and Family Services, it was always a back burner type thing. The biggest thing that any of us done, once a week we were going to lunch, which was a good thing. But then we go out and we're eating and we're just talking about the job. So that wasn't a good thing. But that
Mhm.
was the most that anybody ever done. Later on, the more I worked the job and different people that I work with, our mental health care became more of a priority. And it was a thing, let's go walking, let's go work out, or we're going to have a girls' night, but we're not talking about the job at all, that type of thing.
So
And
y'all
then
started to recognize we have to do
we
this.
have to do
Mhm.
something for ourselves. I mean, because you think that you're just strong, and you don't need anybody, but you really do. You have to talk to somebody or get it off of yourself. And then, I mean, there were a lot of people that did get their own therapist because sometimes you just got to have a break from it all. And we wasn't helping each other by going to lunch, by talking about the job anyway. This case, that case, that wasn't a break. And we realized that, so we just went a different direction. And like, let's go to the track and walk today, or stuff like that. So that helped a lot when we decided that we had to help ourselves as well.
Yeah. Is there any type of protocol, like if there's a child in the system and something happens to that child, that could also bring a lot of guilt, or, oh man, we put them in the wrong foster family, or
Yeah. Oh,
or
yeah.
maybe you return them back and something those types of things. How is there any protocol for you guys to like process through that, or is that you just part of the job and you have to deal with it yourself?
Um, I retired in 2019, so I don't know what the protocol is now. But during the time when I did work, I don't recall there being any. There was not like a counselor that we could go talk to, not specific. If you had your own person, yeah, you could talk to that person. And there were tons of times that the kid might have been returned home because you saw, I mean, everything was done right, and then something bad happened. Or there was times when the child was adopted and something awful happened. But it wasn't anything that you could have, because you can't see the future. You have to work with what you have in front of you, and everything is in place and everything is good. All the counseling, the parenting, everything is there. But sometimes things are just going to happen anyway. So I learned early on that I couldn't fault myself for that, because you can't see the future. I mean, and there were times, the one time in particular, which was a really big case and deal for me, I was like, maybe I should have went out more, maybe I should have called more. But then when I took my own time and just looked at my file, I was out there every week. It wasn't anything that I was gonna see. It just happened. And so that wasn't my fault. And I had to realize that I can't blame myself for things that you can't control. And you can't see the future, so you just put everything in place, and that's just what you, and hope for the best. As long as you know you've done what you need to do.
Mhm. So
So,
two things stuck out to me when you said that. Number one, you did your own kind of boundaries with, I can't let myself get into this blame game. I have to say, what did I do my best? Look at what I did, so you had to set your own stuff to kind of protect your mental health. But the other thing I heard was there probably, if there's not, because there may be in the last several years, if there's not
mm,
something, there probably does need to be some type of protocol for caseworkers to be able to um,
go through
have a
that.
place where they can go to just kind of debrief after something happens, because it's a lot, and it could possibly save the department money from turnover if they started to be a little more proactive in that area. So if anybody's watching and you make decisions in DCFS, that may be something to consider or to look into. Hey, could we have somebody for our staff to process those feelings, or some type
Yeah.
of
That is a
place
good
that they can
idea.
go?
And a lot of times we would just like the group of workers, if something happened, even if it was on my caseload or the next person's caseload, and something happened. I mean, like we all talked together, we all felt the same, and we helped each other through it. But I don't ever recall like, we have a counselor available for you to go and talk to. It was never a situation like that. And there may be now, but there wasn't then.
That's crazy to me when I think about it, because I don't remember that when I was working there. I was like, I don't remember them having anything like that, but it's like they
Yeah.
probably should have, because that's a
Yeah.
lot. Because it was a
Definitely a
lot for
lot.
me hearing the story. So I'd always imagine I didn't have to go into that home and see that situation. I just read about the situation on paper. I
Yeah.
talked to a caseworker. They had to experience that and witness that. So again, I think we have to take care of the workers so that they can better take care of the community.
That is true. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about entering this field?
It's not for the weak. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, you can't handle stuff. It's just some things, everything is just not for everybody. Like I like helping people, I want to take care of people, I want to be there for folks, but I couldn't be a nurse. Absolutely not at all. That just can't be my thing. But that doesn't mean that you can't be a nurse. So you gotta know that you gotta be strong. You're gonna see a lot of stuff. You're gonna see a lot of disheartening stuff. I mean, and I don't say this lightly, it's really a hard job. You never get the thanks or the praise that you deserve. Um, so if you think you're just gonna go in and save the day, that's just not how it works. It's just not how it works at all. And there'll be a lot of days where you go in and you give it your 110% all. And at the end of the day, you're gonna feel like you've done nothing. But you have to take the wins. You have to take when there's a positive story, a positive outcome, even though it may be one a month, and you have worked with 50 families. But you got to know that each case is different and you're doing what you can to help. And it may not seem like you're doing a lot on the front end, but then 10 years later, when you see one of the kids that you work with in the grocery store and they're ecstatic to see you, and they was like, man, you really helped us a lot when you did, that even now I hear that, and that helps a lot. You just got to know that it's hard.
How do you balance your child having activities, and then you may get a call saying, hey, we need you, like having to miss things with your own family because you're taking care of
Oh, a lot of that. It was
other
always a
families.
lot. Yeah.
How do you balance that?
Um, by overcompensating for my own kids is pretty much how I did.
At least
If
you
I,
know.
yeah, I mean, I'm honest about it. And I know that I overcompensated in a lot of ways, but I felt guilty because, man, I should have been at the school at 6 o'clock. It's a quarter to 7. Well, they're coming out, and I missed all of that. But just trying to make up in other ways or doing other things and really explaining to your own kids, because they shouldn't have to not necessarily suffer, but they shouldn't have to miss you being at their stuff because you're helping somebody else. But they need to know, I mean, explain to them what your job is and what it's about. Just being honest with your own kids and your own family to let them know what's going on. So when you're not there, when Christmas dinner starts at 2 and you got a call at 11 o'clock last night and you're still working type of thing, so they'll know, because you're going to miss a lot. And you have to be prepared for that. I think that on paper, the job looks like one thing, but when you actually get in there and start doing it, it's totally different. And that's why I suggested on the front end about the PA jobs to maybe start there, because it's a lot less stressful. and it's a lot less work, but you see what's going on. Or maybe even volunteer, because I mean, they're always looking for volunteers. They're always looking for people who will just transport to visits or who will just supervise a visit. So you can kind of get a feel of what's going on. Unless you absolutely know what the job is about, I wouldn't just take a CPS job unless I did my research, unless I volunteered or did some of the transporting, or maybe you just want to bake some cookies and take them to them. At least you can get familiar with the people in the office and you won't know names or anything personal about them, but you'll kind of know what they're working with. You'll kind of know the visitation schedule when the parents come for visits and stuff. Kind of get a feel or an idea of what's going on in the particular job before you say, oh yeah, I'm gonna take this job, because it's definitely not an 8 to 4:30. A lot of on call, so you may not have weekends off. I mean, it may rotate, so it's a lot of stuff. When you just look at it on paper, it looks like one thing, but then when you actually do the job, it's a lot different.
No, I remember leaving the office and I would come back and that worker would still be there from yesterday.
Yeah.
Because I worked at, I think 4 different offices. I'd go and travel.
Mhm.
And I, like I said, come in and it's like, oh no, we got a call and we didn't have a foster home for this child.
Yeah.
So somebody had to stay here with them. And I would think about, you got a child yourself and you had to stay in an office with
With another, yeah.
somebody's child to make sure they're safe. And if your child had something that night,
You just missed it.
you missed it. And that's just a lot.
That is a lot. I think they've gotten away from that a lot, because in the different counties, they have homes where at least the child doesn't have to stay at the office. They have homes that are actually set up. They use them for visitation.
Okay,
if a child is taken overnight and don't have a place to go, they can go there and get a shower, sleep in a bed, that type of stuff. So it's not a lot of, as opposed to when I first started, if a child was taken and there was no home available, we were just at the office. But I think now pretty much every area has a home that is designated just for a kid if they're taken overnight and no home is available. Even though they may not get to go straight to a foster home, at least they can be at a home.
Right.
So they have access to a shower, you can cook them a meal, and yeah.
Okay,
So,
well, that
is one of the really good things that have happened in the DCFS, because those homes are popping up and available for children to, and then they could also be used for family visits. A lot of them have playgrounds set up outside or toys inside, or they want to watch a movie. So that's a good thing. It makes the visit more family-like, opposed to just visiting at a DHS office in an office. It's more geared toward a family.
No, that sounds like a really positive thing, because those office visits that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
How great is the need for more foster parents?
Oh, always, absolutely. There's a big need. There's always a need for foster families. And a lot of people think, well, I don't want to foster because I don't want to keep anybody long term. There's a need for, say, if a kid gets taken today and they just not, you may want to be a temporary fix. You may be like, I can only keep a kid 2 or 3 days, I may can do a weekend, and there's a need for that. So even though you don't want to be a long-term foster parent, or you don't want to keep kids all the time, you just may be one of the temporary places, and that will alleviate the need for them to stay at the office or even stay at the home that's available. They could actually go to a home and stay. And that way the worker can go home to her own family, opposed to having to stay with the child. So there's a need for long-term, short-term foster parents here, yeah.
What would people need to know? Because I'm sure there are people watching and say, how can I help? What would people need to know if they're interested in becoming a foster parent or something like that?
Well, because I've been out of the game for a while since I returned, but I do know that you can go to the DHS website, and there's a link where you can go through and answer the little questions, like a 5-question questionnaire, if I can recall. You answer those questions, and it'll be sent straight to the county office where you live, and the resource worker will reach out to you.
Okay.
Yeah. So you just
Okay,
put
so
like
if y'all are interested, y'all go to the website. Could they just go up to the office and say find out more information, or is it best to just do the website?
Either would be better. I mean, I don't know. The DHS office, it might be a wait if you go, but on the
Mhm.
website, you can
Right.
just, and that way it'll be more on your time when they contact you because they'll just reach out to you by phone and it's like, hey, we got your interest in being a
Mhm.
foster parent. When can we set up a meeting? So that way, when you go to the DHS office, you know you're actually going to talk to someone. You may go to the DHS office and the resource people have other appointments. So it's probably easier to do it on site, on the website. But you can always go to the DHS office. I mean, if they're open and available.
Yeah. Okay. So if you guys are interested, make sure you reach out, go online, because again, our job is, or my goal here is to bring awareness and again tear down this stigma that something's it's bad to be in the system and all of that. Sometimes the system really can help change the trajectory of a family's life, and you could be a part of that. So if you're interested, please, please, please let me know in the comments, and also again reach out online. Last question. What has been for you during that journey the most rewarding thing about your journey?
The little wins. And I say little, I mean, when it's a big thing when you've worked with a family for a year, or you work with a family for 18 months and they got everything together, the kids to go home, that's the big thing. Or the time, even bigger than that for me, is when you get a report, because not every report warrants a removal. So when you get a report and the report seems all bad, but that's because someone outside the home made the report. But when you go and talk to the people, yes, they need help. Yes, they have issues going on, but it doesn't mean that the kids have to be removed. It's like, oh, hey, well, we can make a referral here, or let's do this, or let's do that. And to see those families, and those cases are typically open 6 months. If they just need something simple, or not necessarily something simple, but if they need some assistance and just don't have the right resources or just don't know where to go to get them. Just the fact that I can be in like, oh, hey, well, I can do this for you, or we can do that, or let's move this here, move it, those type of things where the kids actually get to stay at home and they're safe and they're being taken care of. And then more than anything, when the parents and the children show their appreciation by just telling you like, man, I'm glad you came, we wouldn't have known this, that type of stuff. I think just feeling appreciated, and not necessarily by the agency, but by the families that you work with, when they appreciate that you came in and helped them. I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's just to know that I've helped somebody that appreciates it or that needed it.
Okay, I said that was the last question, but I got one more.
Okay.
What about funding? I know, like, is that an issue that you guys run into where they don't have funding for a lot of programs or to get stuff, or is funding pretty readily available for y'all to get what you need?
When I first started, 2006 or so, uh, there seemed like there was an issue, but I'm of the mindset if it doesn't work one way, I'm just going to ask a different way. And so a lot of times, if people can, if kids can stay in their home, and if all they needed was a toddler bed, or if they needed some assistance just getting their lights turned back on, uh, money was available for that. You just have to do the right paperwork, the right requisition, and get that taken care of. Um, because it would be better to buy a toddler bed or pay an electricity bill than to uproot a whole family and put a child in foster care. And so, if you look at it like that, where you're saving on one end and the child is going to be safe, that's a good thing. Another thing is like around Christmas time, they're always asking for donations or pick a kid to buy for, that type of stuff. Because even though the kid may be in a foster home, the foster parents are not making any money. So they're just, it would be good, just that help at Christmas time was always a big thing to
Mhm.
make sure all the kids had a good Christmas.
Oh, again, y'all hear that. So that's something else, another way we can help. Holidays are coming up. So giving
Yeah.
to the department, giving
in that
gifts,
situation.
offering a child, those types of things.
Just contact your local DHS office. I am absolutely positive that they will be glad to give you a child to shop for. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so very much for your time. It took us a little while to be able to get together, but we worked it out. And so again,
Yeah.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your wisdom you brought today. You gave us a lot of insight. I also appreciate the time and energy you put into that job. I mean, because I know you personally, I know that's a lot of sacrifice. I've seen that. And so again, I appreciate you. And on behalf of the families you help, whether they ever say it, thank you or not, we thank you. And so everybody, again, give a shout out to Cynthia Thompson for coming and sharing and shedding so much light on the topic and the situation. You guys know we'll be right back here next Thursday with another topic. But Minding My Mental Health. If you are in the Arkansas area, you're looking for a counselor or mindset coach, reach out to me. I now accept insurance, not all of them. I accept Qual Choice and Am Better. I'll be Blue Cross Blue Shield on their panel in a couple months. So if you guys spread the word that that's out there, if you're looking for a counselor, and if I know you personally and I can't be your counselor, that's okay. I can still help. We can get you connected to somebody that can help you out, because we do want people getting the necessary help that is available for them so that we all can live our best life. So thank you. Join me right back here next Thursday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. You guys have an amazing day. Bye-bye.